Hey guys, welcome to Proko. My name's Stan Prokopenko and I'm here with Stephen Bauman.
Hello. Did you want me to say hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
We're here in his studio space and he pulled out a bunch of his studies and we're just gonna flip through them and talk about them.
Cool. Yeah. I'm in.
Are you excited?
This is my excited voice.
That's good, okay.
It's really rare that I actually put a date on them. I was just noticing that not all of them are going to be able to be tracked to date, but this stack is probably drawings that encompass or are taken from like a several year period. So some of them are like from back when I was in Sweden. Some of them I did probably last week, which would be interesting if we could kind of track all of it, but where it's available.
You don't put it on the back or anything with the date?
No, most of these, you do so many of these a year.
Put it away right after.
Yeah, I do at least a couple of these every week, in between doing my own work and stuff. So, and every now and again you come up with one that's decent. So this one, you can see why this one is here and this one is not in a.
I personally don't see why they're both not in the, no, seriously.
Well, the difference primarily, is actually in the coherence of the modeling for me. So you have this, the design of the shadow edge through here, right? And then of course, that shadow value is then oriented to a halftone value, which is existing within the lights. Mm-hmm. The relationship of those halftone values to those shadow values to also the sort of nominal highlight value here, I think is a lot more harmonious than what it is here. Even though this one I think is structurally interesting, structurally sound. The actual overall appearance in the end of what the world looks like in this one is probably a lot more true than maybe what this one is. This is a very kind of abstract drawing in a way. This is to me, a lot more realistic.
Okay.
So that's why this one's in the mat board.
Yeah.
And that one's just a sketch that hangs around.
Yeah, but wouldn't you be able to darken that shadow value within just a few minutes and then it would be a much closer to reality? Because it's not a big shape.
But even the modeling though is a lot less sensitive here.
Okay.
And if you like insensitive modeling, if you like modeling that's a little bit rougher,
I do.
Maybe that's interesting.
Yeah, I see how this is way more delicate. I mean, I do see that. But
also, this one, I was employing slightly different techniques in that I think just about everything inside of this, I was using a paper stump that was really, really saturated with graphite. So I just took and rubbed it into. I'd made a big patch of 8B graphite and then just rubbed the stump around in it for a long time. Okay. And then eventually that becomes a kind of pencil that you can use. So you have a line quality that exists at the edge that I'm actually making with a 0.3 millimeter pencil that has probably a B lead in it. Mm-hmm. And then you have a paper stump actually making all of this. Even though underneath this, as I was talking about, the dissection phase that was done underneath this was probably using a 3H. And you can see just a tiny bit of it here in the light shape in the lower section of the arm. You can see triceps and coracobrachialis and biceps differentiated by a line. Whereas in some of the areas that I've modeled or rendered a little bit more, it doesn't have that kind of remnant.
Right.
Whereas this one is just chaos everywhere. Maybe it's fun, but...
Well, before we go any further.
Yes.
I did want to introduce you a little more.
Okay. All right. But I'm the uninteresting part here. I'm going to talk about that's fine.
Well, come on. I mean, they probably know who you are. Famous on Instagram.
I am.
But if they don't know where you are on Instagram, where do they find you?
My Instagram handle. Yeah. I'm saying that right. It's at Stephen Bauman Artwork. And I have also I have a Patreon page. Yeah, go there as well. But I also have a YouTube channel that I'm kind of starting out, so you can be one of the early adopters.
Oh, cool.
I kind of branded it all the same, so my Instagram handle became the thing that I used for everything else. So my Patreon is also Stephen Bauman Artwork.
Okay.
I have a website, Stephen Bauman Artwork.
Okay. Actually. Okay, just search for Stephen Bauman Artwork anywhere you go.
Exactly.
Another thing is we are just about to start recording a full demo, and that's going to be available at proko.com/Bauman. His masterpiece demo is a full realistic portrait drawing demo from a live model. You learn about blocking in the basic shapes, establishing the big impression of light and shadow, organizing halftones, developing the structure and planes of the head, and a bunch more. Stephen's a really good teacher. You guys should check it out.
So these are anatomy studies that I do with my Monday evening course. And we have about 2 hours with the model. I do as short as possible of a lecture about maybe the major bony points that we're going to talk about that evening and some of the kind of, rock star muscle forms that you have to know. Mostly stuff that's just below the surface of the skin. And then we draw, through a series of stages. We kind of look at the anatomy from that pose. So a lot of the stuff that's in here really is that. So if you look at like these two drawings, am I spreading out too much? Keep that in, Brandon. Keep it in. So these are like kind of two studies actually that are taken from totally different years. In fact, like this one I did with my class here like last year, and this was from a class I was teaching in Sweden with a totally different model. This is an African American model. This is a Caucasian, even though I didn't add value to this. But it's why this one is like the local value is as dark as it is. But like this drawing, and it's really, I think, apparent actually in some of the muscles of the upper arm, went through a stage where I had like kind of clearly outlined all of the surface anatomy, right? And then you start to add value to that. The purpose being, right, that all of this sort of information that takes place through here all comes from somewhere. It has a meaning. It has a correlation to what's happening underneath. And I think the more that you can understand those things, the more simple and like eloquent you can be in how you describe it eventually when you're making, maybe making drawings for a more artistic end rather than a sort of academic end, right? So you really want to like extract and simplify, but if you're doing that, what you do leave in has to be like crystal clear, has to be just where it's supposed to be, or it's going to look generic.
Yeah.
Look like.
And if they want to study anatomy and they want to do that on YouTube, where would they go?
I think there's some guy.
Yeah.
West Coast. Really, really cool.
Oh, cool. He's cool. I heard he's one of the coolest.
Proko.com, isn't it?
I think that's what it is.
There's a couple anatomy videos, 1 or 2 anatomy videos on Proko.com. But yeah, so that's in essence kind of how I get to these ones, is to just go through this kind of dissection stage. And also important that in a way that it's taken, these aren't taken from anatomical models, these are taken just from living people that we bring in. We put them under a really strong light. And you try your best to see through the kind of incidental detail of reality and into maybe the meaning of some of the deeper forms of the body.
And how much anatomy did you study? Do you know all of the insertions and origins, and then how the muscles change when they flex and stretch and all of that, and where the bones show through, and like how extensive was your anatomy training? I
would say it's fairly extensive. I built probably 4 or 5. I think 5 écorché models.
Okay, cool.
So that's building the body from the inside out. I do only in an academic sense. Okay. Like I don't sculpt artistically.
Just study anatomy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So building those, you really get into origin and insertion. Actually, the one probably spot I would say is a blind spot is probably I don't really get that much into muscle actions. Okay. Mostly because my applications are more for kind of people in repose. Rather than like if you're an animator, you like muscle actions obviously are hugely important.
Have you seen the drawings for Tarzan, the Disney movie?
No.
Oh man,
yeah?
There's some really cool in the Art of book, some drawings of Tarzan, and then they have an overlay of all the anatomy. It's so cool because it's super exaggerated and like caricatured body shapes, but all the anatomy is really accurate.
Sure, you get that puffed up deltoid when the arm is lifted.
Yeah. And the fingers. He was thinking about all the anatomy as he's designing all of this.
Yeah. This is like the under the radar stuff that I think you probably like. You don't hear when you first get into drawing, and you almost think like, how could someone work that much at drawing? Like, how could you look that in depth into it?
Right.
But like, whatever, 12, 14 years in now, like, it's the baseline for drawing well is like looking that deeply into stuff. It doesn't come out of like just random chance,
Right. And even animation, people think, oh, but it's just cartoons. It's so much simpler. It's like, no, if you want to be Glenn Keane, who's like one of the best, you have to be able to do that. You have to know why you're simplifying the body in that way.
Yeah, back to drawing the body for academic purposes. If you're a portrait artist, the skull is, just get married to it because it's going to be constantly useful and apparent to you. But even when you're refining things like, you have these areas of the face, of course, where the bone is like really directly interacting with the surface, and like the highlights are almost made out of those bony features. Right. Of course, there's a lot of it that gets hidden. But those are the parts that I think probably more interesting from a block-in standpoint, like knowing the sort of angle that you're going to find on the zygomatic arch, understanding the kind of connection of where the ear is kind of coming off of the skull and how the mandible kind of lines up with the external auditory meatus, or the ear hole.
You're getting so fancy.
It's the ear hole. But if you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, you say external auditory meatus. But like, understanding how to kind of triangulate all those anatomical features just as a calculus behind your drawing is, I think, actually when you're looking at kind of technical mastery. So this is like another kind of interpretation in a way. This is a sort of proper dissection. This is maybe what I would say is more kind of loose sketching, just in terms of like playing with line quality. So if you notice, like all the contours have a certain line weight, right? Like if you kind of squint down a little bit and look at this, the value that stands out is actually the contour value, and whatever kind of deeper forms are actually like running through the knee, for instance. And then these interior forms that are sort of like revolving around and through the thigh from one side to the other, and drawing with a lot lighter line quality, always trying to kind of follow the form around. And of course, nominally they are dissections, in that you have like tibialis anterior can be outlined, vastus medialis can be outlined. Even the shape that you find of the quadriceps tendon kind of coming down and encapsulating the patella, all this can be outlined. But if you do it with like the right line quality, you can kind of integrate it into something that also looks like, it's real in a sense, or that it's a sketch of something real.
Yeah, I like how you added the Richet's band in here.
Yeah, what's up with different anatomy books not covering this?
The Richet,
is it just because it's a variant? Like some people find it.
I don't think it's a variant. I think if you look at a medical book, I think it's not important enough. There's a lot of various tendinous sheets all over the body, everywhere, that don't have an importance, and medical books don't show them.
Yeah.
But for artists, it affects the surface in the way we draw it. And so Richet, who created the anatomy for artists, he kind of showed that and gave it a name, because it doesn't have a name. It's more, if you look it up, I tried to do some research on the actual name for it, and it was very generic. It was like a generic sheet of the body. It was like a general sheet of the body. And it was,
well, you have the fascia that goes all the way around, and then you have these thickened sections, and they always cover like the iliotibial tract, the extensor flexor retinaculum.
Functionally very important.
Yeah. But then Richet, who was doing it for, actually, the book that we all know of Richet, like what probably I didn't even realize till ages later, was that, of course, that the original was in French, because he was the director of anatomy at the École des Beaux-Arts in the 19th century. And you know who it was translated by?
No.
Robert Beverly Hale.
Oh.
So the book that we like commonly associate with Richet, should be thanking Hale for kind of bringing into like at least the English language.
I think his name is on.
It's on the cover.
Yeah.
But again, I just never even bothered to like. I think it's probably because I knew about Richet as an anatomist before I knew about Hale. Okay. So it was just a name. I just thought he was a translator. But we actually have a leg here, a life cast of an écorché leg from Hale's studio, which is the time that name started to kind of resonate with me. Yeah. And then I was like, of course, leafing through my Richet's Artistic Anatomy, and I saw on the cover, I was like, yeah, Robert Beverly Hale.
Have you seen Hale's lectures?
No. They're on YouTube, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, someone told me about this. And but I never.
I don't know if they're all on YouTube. I was able to find an entire. It's like 12 hours or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very useful. He's good.
Yeah.
And he had his own method of proportions, which I covered. But he has a whole method. He measures off of cranial heights versus skull heights.
Let me ask you a question, because this. I don't know if we're interviewing you, but we're going to now.
Yes.
All right. So I studied in sight size, where proportion is handled very much in a two-dimensional sense, right? Like you're really thinking about the picture plane. So if you have a foreshortening, things like canons of proportions, like a head and a half in length, don't make as much of an impact. So I never really, like for my purposes, ever really invested that much in looking at like canons of proportions, like in terms of my figurative studies.
Right.
So like I never think, a head and a half in length, or I don't think in head lengths. And I know that it's a really big idea that's out there, but do you find like it's more of an animator's idea, or is it, because like the fine art application of it for me, the way I trained was I felt like almost new.
It is important, well, because when you're drawing the figure, a lot of the times it's vertical.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the drawings I look at on your wall, those measurements would line up perfectly with the angle you're showing them at.
Yeah.
This isn't foreshortened, this isn't foreshortened, none of the legs are foreshortened, everything is pretty much straight up and down. And so that would apply. Sometimes if the leg was coming up, you wouldn't measure it two-dimensionally, but you can get a sense of that.
Initially, it's a tool to learn it, but eventually it becomes part of your intuition. You feel it instead of measuring.
So I always thought of it as like a shorthand in a way, like if in doubt, you could consider it's probably like this.
Yeah, and it's also because not everybody everyone has different proportions.
Well, exactly.
So you do still have to analyze the model and measure the head heights on the model. So that's what we would do. Even if the leg is foreshortened, I would see, okay, how many head heights is that foreshortened leg? So I would take a head height measurement.
In a comparative sense,
Yes. If you are drawing from imagination,
this is where I think it has a lot of
this
stuff.
is a completely different thing. If you are strictly drawing from a model all the time, then you can just look at the model. But if you're trying to create out of your imagination, you're an illustrator, you are in the entertainment world, you have to be able to draw from your imagination. You can't work from models all the time. Not practical.
I went to a very brief workshop with Glenn Bilpu. He was talking in an animator's studio in Gothenburg, and I knew the guy who ran the place. So he said, come by, Glenn's coming by. It's just kind of a thing I wouldn't normally get to interact with, so I went there. And then he was completely out on like observational stuff. He was like, you people, you're drawing everything from the outside. And he had a totally different philosophy on it, which is like probably the beginning of me understanding like these are two vastly like different worlds.
I think a good balance is key here. They're both very useful tools. It depends on what you're trying to do.
Glenn Bilpu. Have you met him?
Yeah, I've interviewed him on my channel.
How many years ago was that?
This was when I almost just first started the channel. But when I was in high school, my animation teacher would just show Bilpu VHS tapes all the time.
Anatomy is super useful. It's incredibly useful. I mean,
with what you do, you draw the body pretty much. That's
if you're gonna be a figurative artist, also like you see like a lot of these have labels, and I do this primarily for the benefit of my students so that they understand that you can make a drawing that you spend a long time on, and also just draw through it.
People, you see that, you know what you're doing.
Just
label all your drawings.
I do that with my fine art as well. I just label the faces.
You just have butt.
That'd be great in your butt videos. That's a decent butt right there.
It is a good butt.
But like, so understanding like what the names of all these muscles are, I think is also incredibly important in terms of like, when you're in the studio alone or with a model, in a sense, like as an artist alone, you're not there with an instructor or somebody else working with you. You need to have like an internal monologue, and you need to develop the vocabulary for that monologue. If you're just looking at the body and you're kind of going, I don't know, it looks rounder over here, less round over there, rather than saying, well, I can see how the sternal oblique tapers down and shows the anterior superior iliac spine, and that flows down the inguinal ligament to the pubic symphysis. That's a much more complex kind of monologue that you can have, right? You have a lot more questions and answers that can come out of that, rather than, I don't know, it looks like is...
Do you think that knowing those names actually helps, or are there some artists that don't know the names at all because they don't teach, but they understand the forms really, really well, and they can have that monologue just by visually in their mind, separating all the muscles visually, instead of with a word? Do you think that's possible?
Sure, anything is possible. I mean, like there are people that will go through drawing studies and have very little anatomical focus and will have very successful drawings that are made out of it. I just think that the incidence of inaccuracy is probably higher and it takes them a lot longer. I think if you want to be efficient about drawing the figure, anatomical knowledge is incredly important.
Yeah, well, anatomical knowledge. What about the
words? No, but I think the words are the same.
Okay.
Like for me personally, I don't take it differently. Knowing what the names are means that I'm able to track them, understand them, think about them. I have a whole language surrounding them. So it's a very I feel very natural, very second nature about drawing anatomy. I think that if I was just looking at them without that sense of vocabulary, it would be, I think it would just be a lot more work trying to keep track of it all without knowing what it was.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe that's like person to person,
Yeah.
But for me, it was critical, absolutely critical to have that dialogue as well.
Yeah, I think if you do, I mean, I think the name, knowing the names kind of just comes naturally too. Once you really dive deep enough into anatomy, you kind of just learn the names.
Yeah. I mean, like at what point? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
like,
why wouldn't you? That means you probably didn't read enough books on it and didn't look at enough diagrams and.
So I'm all in on the names, and I like I said, I understand like it takes all types, and so some people will not bother with anatomy at all. But for me, the deeper I got, the more interesting it got. So back to anatomical studies, right?
Oh, jeez.
These are I know it's terrible, but these are two sort of male and female model. Obviously, one of the front and the back of the torso, both gone through and left in that sort of dissection stage, and you see again like another example of an amplified sense of line quality, right? So the inferior angle of the scapula makes a strong kind of depression underneath it. So we consider it like the ending of a form that you find at the contour, whereas, say, some of the fatty deposits of the upper hip area are left in really light values and allowed to kind of continue and traverse the form rather than kind of interrupting it, like, say, the center line of the spine or something. The line quality use in these is just for academic purposes. It's just to show interior versus exterior forms. But the organization is huge, and it really echoes into all of the work that I do. And I always do this, I sound like, some sort of like, I don't know, military director or something where it's all about organization and but really that's the underpinnings to expression. And I wanted in my own work the idea that I was in control of the expression, that it wasn't incidental, that it didn't come out by accident, but that I could evoke something. And I always found the need to like structure the technical aspects so that the expression can be kind of free and airy, and I can evolve how I would like to, and I'm not limited in any direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when a lot of people look at someone like Feshin or De Juana, they'll think that a lot of that is like chaos and like accidental, happy accidents that happen, but it's so much of it is actually controlled.
Yeah. It's like painting with a chaotic brush is what it's actually doing, right? It's taking chaos and using it here and not there.
That's a misconception that a lot of students have, is they want to do this or they want to do something like Feshin, and they think, I don't need to like learn these, I'll just mess up some areas and make it my style. But that is not the way to go. I think learning how to organize and use all of these tools with full control is a much better way.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. If you want to be confident, I think we're all making work. And I even remember these critiques in college where, you're a painting instructor. Mine was he was a very nice guy. He was a splatter painter, but he was supposed to be teaching representational painting. But it was all about, you need to be more confident in this. Well, how do people actually become confident? By being good at something.
Yeah.
I'm confident because I know what I'm doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it's very difficult to be confident doing it. You can look confident, but the difference between looking confident and actually being confident is immense.
Thank you, Stephen, for showing us your work. I hope you guys got a lot out of our little anatomy powwow. If you like Stephen's work, check out our new masterpiece demo with him at proko.com/Bauman. It's a full, realistic portrait drawing demo from a live model that we filmed over 2 days. It comes with a real-time version that includes every stroke, and a refined cut that we shortened to include all the most important stuff. Stephen is a really good teacher. In his demo, you'll learn about blocking in the basic shapes, establishing the big impression of light and shadow, organizing halftones, developing the structure and planes of the head, and so much more. And stay tuned, we got 2 more videos of Stephen's sketch tour coming soon. See you then.